The man stopped me from being kidnapped. My mother was stationed at Kidnapper Air Force Base around the late 2010s, and being a military child at the age of 12, my life had reset once again. I didn't have friends again, and I had to learn an entire new neighborhood. I didn't really have anything that made me ecstatic. That is, except the Pokemon League held on base. It was ran by a few people who earned their judge cards from Nintendo and held tournaments and just open game nights. It was really fun picking up the card game, playing in the video game. They even had a small gym and Elite Four system. I made a lot of friends, and one of them was one of the judges, who I am thankful still to this day. Because if it wasn't for him, I may not be here right now. The judge in question, who we will call Professor Getsu for the sake of anonymity, was a nice dude. He was the youngest of the three and wore a white professor get-up. He looked maybe on the edge of his teens, early 20s, with dark hair and glasses and a skinny frame. He was extremely helpful to newcomers, sort of like the big brother we could all look up to and strive to beat in our children's cars and video games, even if his game name of Getsu was a bit nerdy even for me. He was always one of the last people to leave, helping to clean up, and he supposedly lived nearby. This last thing is important for what's about to happen. It was a bit of a colder night when the event ended. I was sitting outside in the parking lot, scrolling through memes my friends texted me as I waited for my parents to arrive to pick me up. I was just kinda zoning out as the time clicked by when I heard someone nearby. Hey girlie, you play Pokemon? I would look up at some really big dude, kinda chubby looking. I saw him every now and then in the events and he didn't really stand out too much. I give a small nod, said, "Yeah I do," as he gives this wide smile. Like, creepy wide. He starts walking forward and I am hit with this nasty stench, like bad body odor. I blink a bit as I see he's walking from a black sedan with its back door open. I got this cool card collection. Come here, let me show you. Now, my parents have always taught me stranger danger, but my kid brain thought, hey, he went to events and I saw him, so B should be fine. At least, so I thought. Until he grabbed my wrist and started to drag me to the sedan. To say I immediately started screaming is an understatement. Stinky didn't care though. He was still dragging me, saying how I will have fun, and throwing out things about trading cards, like someone listening would think that he was dealing with a whiny kid. I honestly thought that I was going to be taken, and I would never see my mum and dad again. That I would be on the back of a milk carton and never seen again. Silly, I know, but I was rather sheltered about dying and death at that time. Thankfully, Professor Getsu had walked out at that very moment, presumably on his way to walk home. All I know is I hear the sound of fabric hitting this dude's face as Professor had swung his professor coat right into the dude's face. I feel his hand go to where the dude's grabbing my arm, and I see his hand grab Stinky's pinky finger and yank back hard. Stinky let go and yowled like an animal as Professor pushed me back behind him as he yanked his coat off of the dude. He then kicked at the back of the dude's knees as he caused him to buckle as Professor grabbed his wrists and pulled back on them. Stinky groaned in even more pain as Professor looked at him with just a cold look in his eyes. The big brother figure was gone, and something else in its place. And I think I was a bit scared of it. Professor's tone of voice when he spoke didn't help either, like icy daggers lingered with his words against Stinky. If I see you back here, or doing this shit to my charges, this will pale in comparison to what Japanese prisons will do to you. Stinky would scramble away and get into his car and peel out of the parking lot, Professor glaring at him till he was out of sight. He would then guide me inside of the venue, buy me some fish and chips, and sit down with me until my parents arrived. That cold persona he had when he kicked that dude was gone, back to being the big brother I knew. To be frank, that frightened me. I didn't quite understand why the teenager was so aggro. I only later learned that Professor Getsu was a black belt who taught kids how to defend themselves with his mother at the local activity center. I suspect he had something of a protective persona, or something in his own life led him to act in as much a way. He explained the situation to my folks when they arrived. I wasn't allowed to go to the events and league as much as I used to, but did from time to time. Professor Getsu was still his normal self at the events and helping people, but he would stop coming to the events a year afterwards, his license having expired and his father moving out of the country soon. Reaching about the same age as he was, and with a little sibling on my own, I sympathize with how, for a brief moment, he became something terrifying just to make sure I was safe. Oh, and as for Stinky? He never showed up to the events and he was either banned or just scared of Professor Getsu. I wish the professor a good life and I hope he is doing well. As for Stinky, I wish that we never meet, ever again. A guy the first talked to on a dating site showed up at my job. This story kind of creeped me out. It happened about 9 years ago and sometimes comes to my mind. It creeps me out. So, I was on an adult dating site. One of the fetish types. I know. Don't judge me. I just was looking for some fun. Lol. Anyway, I was stupid and gave out more information than I should have. I was chatting with a guy. He had asked me at some point what I did for work. At the time, I was working at a McDonald's, so I told him. He asked which one. I, stupidly, told him which one. We chatted off and on. We hadn't been chatting for too long. I also stupidly gave him my phone number at some point. He would talk about how he wanted to meet me on my break and have some fun on my break. I told him no thanks. I don't bring my lifestyle to my job. Anyway, so, I checked my messages just before I was due to clock out of work. Luckily, I did. He mentioned that he was at my job and told me what he ordered. I think it was the Big Mac meal. I was like, okay, well, don't expect me to do anything with you. I'm not interested. He then got upset and wasn't accepting that I wasn't interested. I was also scared because I had sent him a face picture of myself, but I had never received one from him. I really wasn't too interested in him, so I decided I didn't need a face picture since I likely wasn't going to meet up with him. His interests weren't what I was looking for, and I have a hard time straight up saying I'm not interested and just slowly started to ghost whoever I had no interest in. Now, luckily, I hadn't told him my work schedule, so he didn't know that I was about to clock out. So, after clocking out I told one of my managers that I was on a dating site and some guy just showed up to my work and I have no idea what he looks like and that I was going to hang out in the back in the break room for a bit. Luckily, she didn't judge me and just was like, oh. Okay. So I waited about half an hour before I left. I didn't have a car at the time and had to walk home and was afraid he would see me and try to pick me up in his car. Luckily, no one followed me. So I was in the clear. So, creepy guy, let's never meet. I don't think he ever messaged me or I ended up blocking him or something. I don't know if this really is all that creepy, but it creeps me out that some random person just decided that he would show up to my job and expect me to want to meet up with him. So yeah. Now, I just give a vague response as to where I work now. I don't work in the same town I live in, so it would be hard to pinpoint my exact location. This opened my eyes and made me more aware of the information I give out to strangers. Trigger warning. This story contains the harm of children. It's not detailed, but if it makes you uncomfortable, skip to the next video. If you're enjoying the content, please like and subscribe. Girl tried to drown me as a kid, then went on to try to kill me as an adult. When I was about 9 or 10, I was invited to a classmate's birthday party at some swimming baths. All of us the same age. It was a small class of about 20 kids and I'm pretty sure everyone was invited. Just to clarify, I'm a boy. Anyway, I kinda got separated from everyone and it was just me and this girl alone. I wasn't particularly close friends with her, but I did know her as she was in my class. To describe the location we were in, it was in a tunnel that connected the main wave pool to a lazy river. There wasn't really anybody else there, just me and her, when she suddenly lunged at me without warning. She grabbed my head and held it underwater. I was a pretty skinny kid and she was bigger than me and a bit of a tomboy. About 20 seconds went by as I furiously tried to free myself, but she wasn't letting go. Fight or flight and mass panic took over and I eventually fought my way free. I was coughing and spluttering water as I emerged. I remember looking at her and being just in shock. I think I began to ask why she did that when she lunged at me again. She again held my head underwater for what felt like a lifetime before I fought my way free. Both times I genuinely thought I was going to drown and she didn't let me up. I had to fight my way free. I couldn't swim at this time, but the water in the lazy river and tunnel was just maybe chest high. I began to backpedal away from her. She was giggling as if it was funny and had this kind of crazed look and grin on her face. I couldn't just climb out to escape as it was a tunnel, so I had to try and get out of there. As I was backpedaling, she was following me and I made sure to keep distance so she couldn't lunge again, but she was gaining on me. I actually managed to reason with her as I was so scared of her I was babbling at her. I tried to distract her by suggesting we go down a water slide together. It worked as I could see her thinking about it and she stopped chasing me. I managed to exit the tunnel and water, and she slowly followed me but seemed a bit unsure. I immediately felt more safe as I was out the water and could see other people about as we headed towards the slides. I kept talking all the way up about how fun the slides were, etc., but she didn't really speak at all and had a really strange look on her face the full time. Anyway, after we went down the slides, I caught up with my friends and just stuck with them the rest of the time as was a bit shook up. I never told them about it as it was a bit embarrassing to admit a girl had tried to drown me and was worried I'd get teased. Anyway, fast forward to adulthood. This girl turned out to be a lesbian. Not that there is anything wrong with that. But she got with her partner who had 2 or 3 kids from her previous relationship with a guy. Turns out they would torture the kids and eventually killed one of them. She is currently serving a life sentence in prison. I told my friends about this swimming pool incident after hearing about her crimes, and I'm pretty sure they think I'm just bullshitting as none of them took me seriously. Maybe as I kind of lightheartedly said I was almost victim number 1. However, nonetheless it is a bit crazy to think back, as she obviously was a genuine psychopath, and if I'd never fought her off me to escape, and then convinced her to go down that slide, I genuinely believe she could have killed me. Share your story in the comments, I would love to add them to a video.